Hey folks, this is Jason Lewis, the producer of the From the Shadows podcast. I just want to remind you about our website, fromtheshadowspodcast.com. We have a Facebook page. We would appreciate it if you like and follow. Also, join our discussion group on Facebook called After the Shadows. We have a Twitter feed. Please follow us on Twitter. It can be found with @podcast_from. Follow us on Instagram at From the Shadows Podcast. We have a YouTube channel. Go to the search bar at YouTube and put From the Shadows Podcast, and please subscribe to that channel. We are also on the Odyssey Radio Network, and we can be found there at odyssey1.com. We're still on the traditional podcatchers that everybody loves to listen to us on. We get a lot of feedback, so please rate the podcast and communicate with whether you're on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or Google Podcasts. We're there, and we appreciate it when you leave comments for us. We also have a Patreon page. It can be found at www.patreon.com/From the Shadows. You can receive books, stickers, coffee mugs, and special content just for our Patreon subscribers. Check it out for yourself and see what packages that we have to offer. Well, that's all I have for you right now, folks, and thanks for being a part of the From the Shadows podcast family. So with that being said, let's get this episode started.
In the early 90s, 91, 92, I worked at a sheriff's office in a jail. And our jail at that time was one of the few jails that could house federal inmates. So when the U.S. Marshals, DEA, wherever would arrest people within about 7,500 miles, they would all come there because the federal courthouse was there, and we would house these inmates and stuff. And they had just a giant sting of drug arrests. Okay, the DEA and the Marshal Service did, and supposedly this one guy, and I talk about this with my brother all the time. There was one old guy that I'll tell on another story. He was supposedly, they had him supposedly linked all the way to Pablo Escobar in this little old town I live in, Mm-hmm. And anyway, but one of the guys that got arrested, he had made some hand-to-hand sales of controlled substance, marijuana, cocaine. I think it was marijuana for him. He was a Native American, which, not that that's anything wrong with that or anything, but that he was the only one in the jail, right? So we had to put him down by himself because he had this long list. And Jason, you know what I'm talking about. Some of these guys, once they get incarcerated, they have a long list of. They'll all suddenly be a bunch of religious requirements, or they'll have whatever they have, and they'll ride that into the,
Oh, yeah.
for special privileges or whatever. His deal was he felt, as the only Native American, that he couldn't be up there in general population, that he needed to be down there, in his own room, his own, I call it a suite, but it wasn't really as a holding cell. Mm-hmm. And when in reality, what it is all the people upstairs was tired of his goofiness, right? Because he was, he's 50 years old. He was an old 60s hippie Indian, if you can imagine that. And he was just freaking nuts. And part of it's probably an emotional deal, and the other part of it is just 40 years of drinking and smoking dope and who knows what else. You don't have your faculties to be thrown in a jail cell with, at that time, Snoop Dogg and the crack dealers. We had some bad asses in there, you know what I mean? And they don't care about your reservation affiliation, right? They want you to shut the F up, right? And turn the TV to their channel or whatever. Because back in the day, they had one channel. You'd have like 15 dudes in a tank. Mm-hmm. They called, and they had a little old, like 10, 11-inch black and white TVs. And they'd get 3 local channels, right? Mm-hmm. ABC, CBS, and they'd fight over what they were watching. As crazy as that sounds. So we brought this old boy down and put him in lockdown, right? 15 feet from where the booking desk is. And one night in the middle of the night, and I had an intern with me. I don't want to say his name because he's a prominent state police captain here now. But at that time, me and him were college punks, and he was my intern, right? We're working midnight shift. And this old Indian, he started with, I'm trying to remember what he had, but he ended up getting some toilet paper. And at that time, they could still smoke in the jail. And they would roll their own cigarettes. Anyway, he had a little, he's going to start a fire, and we're watching him on this camera, right? We're watching him. Booking desk is called, the console's what we call the radio, was calling out, hey, what's he doing? Looks like he's building a fire. Looks like he's putting this teepee together. He's going to put all this stuff together. He's going to burn his mat, and we're watching this real time because we were forbidden to go in there on these federal inmates because they might be Joe badasses, right? And, that was what the administration thought. So if you needed to go in there and get one, you had to either call and get what they call a road deputy or a police officer, because, you're in a town with, 50 cops on duty. They can send a cop over there, which they'd always, you never did that because then that looked like you couldn't handle your stuff because, even at 21, I was better than half the cops they had in that town. But whatever, as far as fighting, Grover, me and you've had this conversation before, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
There's people out there in the world that think you don't know nothing until you go to the police academy or do something, do whatever. In real life, some kids just grow up tough, and I grew up a lot tougher than the average police officer. So, and so's the boy with me. The boy with me is half my size, but got twice my attitude. I mean, good German farm boy. I mean, he's ready to fight. Open that door. So the dispatch says, no, we're going to send such and such as deputy. This old deputy that actually just retired the other day, this last year, and worked till he was 74 years old.
Oh, jeez.
Yes. Can you imagine him?
Why?
I don't know, because he owns a 600-acre farm, so he could just farm something to do, I suppose. I don't know. But at that time, he was 50-some years old, snow white hair. And he come in there and, what's going on? Well, this guy's about to start this jail fire or fire in jail or whatever. And of course, by the time he get in there, this dude's this guy's getting this little fire just about to start. And of course, first words out of his mouth was, that the effing Indian? And I said, yeah, that's him. And he said, open that door. So, and this old-fashioned jail with big Folgers, and that's the brand, Folgers brass jail keys. You know what I mean? You got to put a big key in that thing and turn it.
Oh, yeah.
I put the key in that door and turn it, big old flat key. You know what I'm talking about, Jason?
Yeah.
And I pull that door open, and this guy jumps up, and he looks past, because me and this intern has had some dealings with him through the door. Hey, stop that, quit that. We're going to have to come in there. And he's like, screw you, come on, bring it on. I'm ready for you. And he was making a little powwow, almost like a sweat lodge dance or something. He's turning a holding cell into his, yeah, looking up at the camera and throwing his head back and doing all his wounded knee stuff. And so we opened that door ready to fight. And when I opened that door, that old deputy took one step in there. And like I said, he's got snow white hair. And this guy stopped, looked at him, said, oh, white buffalo, and starts, oh, white buffalo. And starts doing this seance type shit. And of course, Dave, that's his old deputy, he doesn't know what to do. And he goes, knock this shit off, God damn it. Now, if you don't sit out there and shut your mouth, we're going to take it. And we took all this stuff out, and basically his stuff was, you give them a mattress. At that time, they got a mattress and like an old army blanket or two. And we took all the stuff, left him in concrete. But old white buffalo. So about 6 months later, he's got a federal public defender, and his defense was that land was in his house in little 2 acres or whatever, had been in his family for 2 or 3 generations, and it was tribal land, and they had brought all of these like 1875 treaties of Hidalgo, or they brought all this cowboy and Indian crap out in this courthouse that was not prepared for it, because they were rubber stamping these drug convictions right and left, right? Mm-hmm. And then you got this liberal public defender that says, oh no, this is Indian ground, and the Treaty of Hidalgo gave them all the ground west to the Mississippi and south of the polar ice cap or whatever it was. Just and they muddied the water so good that they kicked his case from federal court down to state court, and he just got a few years. And he wanted to, and it wasn't in court. I'd say he had made little signs. He had this fence around it. He had made little wooden hand painted signs, like you'd make it say rummage sale or something. And then they would say, keep out Indian reservation. What else did they say? Tribal land. He had put all this crap around his house. Of course, that just gave them something to laugh at as they flashbanged it and ran in there with some MP5s and kicked in the door and arrested him. But when it came to court, by God, they thought, I don't know, maybe. And he got out of most of it. So I always thought, now that's a story. Old Chief Wannadoobie. So that's what we called him from then on. Chief Wannadoobie. Old Chief Wannadoobie.
Oh, man. Okay. I don't even know where to go from that.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.